A Utah family under fire for plotting to kill their in-law. One family member took a deal, flipping on the entire family. We're taking a look at how it went. And in California, baby Emmanuel Haro remains missing. His mother charged in his death. She shows up in court today. We're looking at why things keep getting delayed. And we're getting our panel's hot takes on a law that's grabbing headlines. Should you be able to sue a home wrecker? The court of law is done for the day in those cases. Let's call to order Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for joining us. We are starting this hour in Utah. A man is on trial in a case prosecutors say began with a lie and ended with a father never making it home. Kevin Ellis admits he shot and killed his brother-in-law, Kathryn Restelli, firing 7 times, but claims it was self-defense. Prosecutors tell a very different story, though. They say that Restelli was unarmed and that he was lured to the home under the belief that he was simply picking up his children and taking them back to California. Instead, investigators say his wife, Kathryn, along with her brother and her mother, Tracy Grist, had already planned his murder. Kathryn pleaded guilty and spent a second day on the stand testifying against her brother. Let's get you caught up on that testimony on what you may have missed today.
Kevin really didn't have a job, right?
Correct.
And kind of beholden to Tracy, your mother, right? He didn't have money. He kind of was beholden to asking her for money, having her buy food and things like that, right?
Correct.
Kevin would express shame about that role, wouldn't he?
He never expressed it to me.
And again, when we unpack in more detail these events of the night in question when Matt was murdered, as you say, by you, you would actually even talk to your mother about her belief that she could use that to manipulate Kevin. For instance, she would say, Kevin's suicidal, we could just have Kevin go out there and kill Matt and kill himself.
She had said that out loud, yes.
These were never discussed with any of your family members, right?
The plan to murder him? No.
The plan to lure him out so he could be hurt.
It was discussed with my mom and Kevin and myself.
What do you mean discussed with Kevin? Kevin's never around.
He was around sometimes, and he would be a part of those discussions.
You're saying now to this jury, in this trial, that Kevin involved himself personally in discussions about luring Matt and hurting him?
Yes.
When was it that Kevin was involved with discussions?
After sushi, I know that he sat down with us and had that discussion.
Now, your mother has been described, and I think maybe even by you, as a mastermind. When you talk to these police in your interviews and such, you talk to her about being the mastermind of this, that it being her idea, right?
Yes.
In other words, not even your mother told you what she ever told Kevin, right?
Not what happened at sushi, but I know that she had discussed it with him.
How do you know you've never been in the presence of your mother talking?
Correct.
You told police, didn't you, that in fact the scenario was your mother seemed to isolate you and Kevin in this and say, I'll talk to Kevin, and she talked to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You never talked to Kevin.
There was one conversation where I was present with Kevin and my mother.
During this time period where you told police you never saw Kevin from 5 to 9, right?
I was mistaken that, yes, I did see Kevin after sushi.
So we have another version today, and your explanation is that you were mistaken when you told police in hours of interviews connected to your plea agreement where you were supposed to be truthful?
It's it's a very traumatizing thing, and yes, I may have forgotten about it.
So we had actually talked yesterday about them returning home from sushi.
Yes.
And how shortly after they returned home did you have this conversation?
Right after they returned.
Okay, what happened?
We just discussed how the night was possibly going to go and what preparations were still needed to be done to get the house ready.
Okay, and who was present during this conversation?
Me, my mother, and Kevin.
Okay, and it was discussed how the night might go.
Correct.
What specifically was said?
That Kevin would be waiting for him downstairs, that my mother would be downstairs as well. I would be upstairs with my kids.
And then what would happen?
And then what would happen? Yes, that I would be murdered that night.
So, specifically, what was said and who said it about what would happen?
My mother did a lot of the talking, and me and Kevin were both present.
And did Kevin say anything during that conversation?
I don't recall.
Let's bring in our panel of experts who are with us. We've got a power panel for you. Attorney and former judge Quentin Washington is with us. Criminal defense attorney and former head New Jersey County prosecutor Bob Bianchi is here too. And trial attorney and fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers Ann Bremner is here. Good to see all of you here on Court of Opinion. Former Judge Washington, I'm going to start with you. How powerful do you think this testimony was from Kathryn Restelli? Because obviously she has a lot to gain from testifying.
Very powerful, because once you have family members testifying against family members, even if they are in-laws, that's a big deal. And so what jurors are always looking for is the credibility of the witness, and why wouldn't she have credibility in that space? And they're going to afford her credibility in that space because she's testifying.
And Bremner, your opinion of Kathryn Restelli on the stand?
Well, I always thought of that. And it's nice to see you, Julia. I think of that one that the family that slays together tries to stay together, and she's obviously not doing that. But she seems credible. She doesn't seem that upset about it. I mean, that's the only thing that I think takes away from her testimony. And that's a pretty animated cross, I would say, and she seems to be withstanding it.
Oh, yeah. Bob Bianchi, she seems to be unmovable. Does that matter when you know that she must have been prepped over and over for testimony like this?
Guys, listen, as a homicide prosecutor, I've put co-defendants on the stand, and because I had to. I needed it to prove my case, but I never liked doing it, because if the jury doesn't believe this witness, the defense is going to basically say, if she's not believable, then you can't believe the government's case. The only reason the government put her on is because they needed her. Look at all the incentives. Look at everything, the differing stories. I think this defense lawyer is doing a very good job, not only in his cross-examination, but his cadence, his attitude, in and of itself explains to the jury she's not worthy of belief. So as a prosecutor, I'm concerned if my witness is getting hit like that.
Yeah, I like the little comments that he made here and there, Bob. He did definitely have a unique demeanor. Quentin Ann said that a family that slays together usually stays together on it. We were talking about this connection to another family murder plot case. Of course, the Kathryn Restelli of that family has not been charged, but let's talk about the Adelsons, because there's a link here, and it's not just because we're calling it the Utah Adelsons.
Right. Years ago, when we talked about it on this network, it was that the prosecution is going to introduce evidence that they were doing internet searches of the Adelson case. Why in the world are you doing internet searches of the Adelson case, which has facts very similar to this, without having that as something you're thinking about, some level of harm or some level of murder to a family member? Like, to get all the way there, like, that's going to be some damning evidence, because that's what they were looking up without any provocation if they didn't do anything that's alleged in this crime.
Yeah, and we were just showing a photo of Mama Donna Adelson, her daughter Wendy Adelson. They both testified, so there's that dynamic there. But now you've got, in the Utah case, you've got Tracy Chris, who is the matriarch of her family, hasn't gone to trial yet, and her daughter is actually testifying against her on full about a plot. I mean, that's very different than how things turned out in the Adelson case.
Well, and I don't know why they were looking at it on the internet, because that's like the last thing you want to look at if you want to have a successful family enterprise homicide, right? But I think at this point it's Utah. I mean, it's conservative, it's outlandish. You've got a witness in here that seems credible, that it says the thought was we're going to kill him. And by the way, being hit 7 times in self-defense, I don't think so. Even those little bit of the Wild Wild West out here in Seattle, Washington, and Utah.
And I've got a question, Bob. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about the defense and the way that they did this cross-examination. They were really showing this close relationship between the mother and daughter, and how the mother seemed to be in charge, and that maybe he was a patsy, the brother, that yes, there was a plot, but he didn't really know about it. How much does he need to know in order to be on the hook for this in the minds of a jury?
It's very difficult to say. I kind of look at it in a different way. I keep in mind that the prosecution's got the obligation to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And as a defense lawyer, you at a minimum try this case to hook one juror. All I need is one that's not going to believe this story. What they're going to believe or not believe at the end of the day, they have to believe in unanimity. So the prosecution has to make sure that whatever lay witnesses they're putting up there that may have a motive to lie or have bias, that they have objective evidence to support the witnesses that they have up there. And I haven't seen it yet. And by the way, last point, internet searches, I get really nervous. I hate to have people looking at my internet account. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of searches of the Adelson family for sure in that case, having covered that trial. Let's take a look at this. The second person to be called by the state of Utah is a polar opposite to the person that we saw for 2 days in Kathryn Restelli, and that's the mother of the victim, Diane. Take a listen to some of her testimony.
I learned the following morning around the 8 o'clock hour when Tracy Grist called me. And the first statement she said, "Are you sitting down? Are you with your husband?" And I said, "Okay." He said, "Matt is dead." End quote.
Did she tell you any more about that?
No.
Did that cause you concern? Did it cause you concern?
My immediate thought was that Matt maybe had had a tire blowout or something had happened on the road and that he was in a car accident. I had no inkling or no thought that Matt was murdered by the family.
In my mind, my son was only being protective and loving and kind to the people in my home.
I think the family has a lot of explaining to do. This whole thing seems like a setup.
We would never plan to hurt someone.
Now, that second clip was a phone call of this mother of the victim calling the victim's mother-in-law to ask what happened. It seems suspicious. Quentin, what do you think about the mother on the stand and how compelling that is for a jury?
I mean, I think it's going to be very compelling. But here's the situation you're in. You've got mother and mother having a conversation about death in a family that's supposed to be close. To get all the way here stretches the bounds of credulity when parties don't get there unless something happened. Meaning, if I'm discussing my child being killed by somebody they were supposed to be in a relationship with, that's something that I couldn't even fathom doing. And that's what she's getting on the stand with credibility as the mother decedent saying. She has credibility in that space because she's like, I thought it was a tire that blew out. And she's realizing that her son is now dead.
Yeah, and final words on this. The emotion attached to something like a family plot. We talked about not a lot of emotion from Kathryn, but are jurors going to need to see and feel that, especially to humanize the shooting victim in this case, whether or not this was self-defense or not?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And whenever I defend or when I was a prosecutor in homicide cases or serious felonies, you get the mother on the stand. Usually, if you're against the mother, you don't ask anything other than you're his mother or you're the decedent's mom, because everybody gets it. This is her son, and she's going to be sympathetic whether she's somebody that cries on the stand or emotes in any way, or she just sits there quietly. And so I think she's a very, very big witness because hopefully she can bring him alive to the jury.
Yeah, great opinions from everyone. We have to leave it there. Everyone's going back into that courthouse at 10:30 Eastern in the morning for more state witnesses. Up next, we're turning to Bob Bianchi's area, New Jersey, for the Mansion murders trial. Evidence was presented today in court. Today laid out a clearer timeline of what prosecutors say Paul Canero did the night that he allegedly killed his brother's family and burned their house down. We have the details next.
Tonight, on closing arguments, Jake Harrow pleaded guilty to murdering his son, baby Emmanuel. But will Rebecca Harrow also plead guilty? We're live with the latest from today's hearing.
Closing arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
I'm going to ask you a lot of personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is Victim to Verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation. back. We are headed to New Jersey today, where it was day 6 of testimony in the Mansion murders trial of Paul Canero. Now, he's facing 4 counts of first-degree murder because prosecutors allege that he shot and killed his brother, Keith, his sister-in-law, Jennifer, and then stabbed to death his niece and nephew. I mean, it's the most horrific of details. This all happened back in November of 2018, but prosecutors say he didn't stop there. They also say that he set fire to his brother's house, and then to try and cover everything up, he set his own house on fire to try to make it look like their families were being targeted in some kind of attack. Now, the jurors saw and listened to a lot of evidence today. We're breaking it down with what stood out the most to our team. Take a look, starting with the video. This was shown today. It captures Paul Canero approaching his home surveillance DVR system just before it was disconnected. So this is video that was captured at 1:28 a.m. on November 20th, 2018, so the day of this fire, a couple of hours before the alleged quadruple murder. This is a window of time. So the camera to the basement had been disconnected. The basement is where numerous firearms and ammunition were seized. DVR data had been found that it was operational with no disruption since October of that year, nearly a month prior. Take a look. All right, we see there Paul Canero coming towards his DVR, and then after that is when police say there's nothing else. So let's bring back in our guest panel just to break down how compelling that is for a jury, and if it's some of the best evidence so far. We got fantastic trial attorneys for you, Quentin Washington, Bob Bianchi, and Ann Bremner. And I'm going to start with you. What do you think about that evidence? Is it probative?
Yeah, it's devastating. It's probative. It's prejudicial, of course, and it's devastating. I mean, he's caught in the act, and the jury can see him right there. So there's a lot of great evidence in this case, but I think that's some of the best.
Yeah, Bob, there's a lot of great evidence, but some of it goes to the defense theory, too, that someone else did this. It was horrific, but that might be even more beyond what we've seen so far.
Now, the timeline here, the cover-up, consciousness of guilt, the firearm being disabled, the DNA and the firearm and the forensics, the phone call the night before, and the problem for the defense in the case. And by the way, let me say, because sometimes I can be critical as a prosecutor, having done a lot of murder cases. This prosecutor's opening statement and their direct case so far has been pristine, amazingly presented, organized, detailed. They are giving the goods to the jury step by step, piece by piece, and this is not a good look. The defense has to rely on maybe the brother did it, the other brother. Well, all these other things in the videotape and all this nefariousness and the evidence and the DNA isn't with the other brother. So if the motive is money, that flushes both ways, both for the other defendant that the defense is saying, but moreover, the prosecutor is saying that applies to this defendant. And with this defendant, look at this tape. What's he doing? He's up to no good here.
That's true about the motive. No one else really having a motive here. Quentin, I want to show you this. We have some video that was played today, really grainy, so even harder to see than the other video that we just played on the DVR. But this is surveillance video outside of Paul Canero's house that night. So he said that he allegedly turned off his DVR around 1:30 a.m. Around 2:06 a.m., this is the best image the prosecutors have of his house. So it looks like car lights, it looks like movement. That's what they want these jurors to see, is that he was making a turn and leaving his driveway in these wee hours where these crimes were alleged to have been committed. What do you think about that evidence as being some very compelling evidence for this jury?
I think it is. I think it's the accumulation of evidence, right? As you start putting more and more evidence on, like at a certain point, you have to ask the question, if you don't believe that he is going to disable a camera, then if you don't believe that that's him in the car, then what's a reasonable explanation of what happened?
Let's talk about the motive. Bob brought it up. We've got the trust. Let's take a look at what we have as evidence number 2. Keith Canero's trust. So, of course, he is the victim here. And this trust was made when he was about to marry his wife, Jennifer. So this was actually long ago that it was set up, but the beneficiaries were supposed to be his wife and kids. Here's a look at how this trust was laid out. And the contingent beneficiaries were his 2 brothers, Paul and Corey. Now, Corey, according to prosecutors, had nothing to do with this, but Paul would have only stood to receive anything, 50%, if Keith, his wife, and all the kids died. I mean, Quentin, I'm actually going to circle back to you because you mentioned just the horrificness when we were talking during the break of all of these family members being killed and it all being potentially over money.
Yes, but at the end of the day, here's what you have to think through. If you have a list of how not to be a suspect in something, you don't have a money motive. You don't all of a sudden have an amount you can get if all the people before you all of a sudden end up dying. You don't end up at the scene randomly when this happens. You don't end up, having burns and injury marks on yourself. Like, these are ways to be a suspect, and you end up being the #1 suspect the more you tick off the checkoff list, and that's what's happening here.
And Bremner, what do you think about the trust?
I think it's connect the dots. I mean, it's like the most perfect explanation for why he did it and the perfect evidence of his guilt. I had a case where I represented a victim in a murder for hire in a business dispute. Basically, it was over money. And the one partner who went to Yale, who's a doctor, took out a hit on my client. And so you think, why would he do all this, just carnage, for money? But the fact is, some people are that way. And my case, luckily, he went to prison. He's still in prison, but he tried to hire somebody, and that person wore a wire, and the rest is history with the FBI.
Oh, wow. Bob, can I ask you about this? I have still struggled with the injuries to these victims. You have the parents who were shot to death, but the children being stabbed to death. That just doesn't make sense to me, even if he's trying to cover things up. How do you digest that part of this case?
Like you say, you don't need motive to prove your case, but as a prosecutor, you certainly want it. But I am very careful, or I was as a prosecutor before I was jumping to conclusions, because I think multiple things can be true at the same time. I see this as a ravaging, violent, angry attack. I mean, maybe there's a financial motive to get the money. And that applies to lots of people. I think that there was an argument. There was this thing about a theft that was going on about money in the business. This speaks to me about betrayal, hatred, somebody who's so angry that somebody did something that they feel a loved one has really done something terrible and put a knife in them, and you know what? I'm going to get back at you. I mean, maybe there's some financial motive to it. If there is, and he did this that way for that reason, it makes him the coldest, sickest monster. I've handled lots of cases. I've never seen anything like that kind of carnage. But no matter how you add it up, if he is in fact guilty, we'll wait for the jury to determine it. Whatever it was, this also speaks of anger in addition to just money.
Great perspective, Bob. Let's turn to the third and final piece of evidence that we pulled from today. This is something that the jurors heard, and that's always really great at bringing jurors into the scene of what happened. This 911 call came from a man who lived in the same area as Keith Canero. Now, Dennis Kapora, rather, is his name, and he heard gunshots during the early morning hours of November 20th, 2018. He called 911, and again, this is the day of the alleged murders. He said he was awoken by the sound of gunshots. Let's take a listen to that call.
Question, do you have hunting in the middle of the night in Costa?
No, you're not allowed to hunt anywhere in the middle of the night.
Right,
are you hearing gunshots?
I heard gunshots, yeah.
Okay, where are you? Let me send somebody to the area.
Fowling and River's Edge.
Okay, you don't see anything, you just hear it?
I was in bed and clearly I heard pump, 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 and then one boom. Like, it's just clearly a gunshot.
And how many of them did you hear?
It was that, 5. And then 2 secondary and 1 more.
This witness, his house is about 3 miles away from Keith Canero's house, but he even said on the stand that it sounded like, quote, somebody got whacked. Quentin, Washington, you can't always pick how your evidence comes out. This guy turns out to be a very helpful witness because he can pinpoint those gunshots.
Yeah, man, that's tough to be able to counter, because if you're saying that, he has no reason to be saying that except that's what he heard and that's his recollection of what happened. And at that point, that is put on top of the other evidence that's already very damning in this case. And that's going to be tough to rebut.
And the defense tried to bring up that he was actually 3 miles away. Do you think that hinders at all his hearing in a very quiet area, I assume?
Well, I mean, I look at that and I think that guy is one credible witness, and he heard it, and it links with what happened. So the sound carried, and he called in saying, can he hunt at night? It's just beautiful testimony for the prosecution.
Bob Bianchi, final words on where the defense might go in this case once it goes to them.
First of all, I have to say, as a Jersey guy, the terminology of thinking that somebody got whacked in the middle of the night is just something that's really funny to me. But where the defense goes, listen, I mean, exactly. The government has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And, you know, as I always say with defense lawyers, sometimes you dance with the one you brought. So this is the case that's there. They're going to challenge the evidence. They're going to bring out ulterior motives. They're going to point to the third-party defendant, that is the person who's not in the chair. And then they're going to let the jury make a decision. I mean, there's only so much that you're going to be able to do. So far, the evidence seems to be compelling. But again, you only need that one juror. And maybe the police case falls apart. Maybe you find out that there were some investigative missteps. Or, as I've said, in this particular case, and I've always said this as a homicide trainer for prosecutors, did you dot your I's and cross your T's to eliminate other suspects? Or did you pigeonhole and say it's only this guy and disregard other evidence? Stay tuned. We'll see.
We will see in that case. Our power panel is standing by. We are headed to a break, and then we will go beyond the gavel, breaking down the biggest true crime cases, and this one has been grabbing headlines for a while. A mother accused of killing her infant and then claiming to the world that he was kidnapped. She was back in court today, and there were some delays. We have everything that has happened so far in the case next. Welcome back. We are taking you beyond the gavel. In California, a mother accused of murdering her infant son and then reporting him as kidnapped was back in court today for a brief hearing where her felony settlement conference was pushed again to March 26. Now, this case began last August when Rebecca Harrow and her husband Jake claimed that their baby, Emmanuel, was abducted while she was changing a diaper in a parking lot. Now, investigators later determined that story was all made up, and a week later, both parents were arrested, accused of killing the child. Rebecca's husband, Jake Harrow, pleaded guilty to murder during his felony settlement conference, and he was sentenced to the maximum 25 years to life in prison. Now, during that sentencing, Emmanuel's grandmother told the court she never even had the chance to meet her grandson.
I wanted Jake to face me, to look at me, because I told him that I would be here for his sentencing before he was arrested. I talked to him about, as a friend, to tell me everything, because he didn't give me the opportunity to meet my grandson. He destroyed my whole family. He branded his children for life. He damaged all his children for life. And in doing that, he destroyed my family, my children, everybody in my family. All my children are destroyed by this.
And adding insult to injury in this case, investigators say Emmanuel's remains still have not been found there in California, if that is where they are. Rebecca Harrow continues to maintain her innocence. Let's bring back in our power panel. Quentin Washington, Bob Bianchi, and Ann Bremner. Bob Bianchi, let me start with you on this. What is happening behind the scenes? I mean, this has been months that it keeps getting pushed out. Now it's pushed out to March. Is she going to plead guilty the way her husband did, or is she going to take this to trial?
Gosh, I was hoping not to be the first one to comment on this, because I've been doing a lot of research and trying to figure out, like, what's going on with this case. And I don't know about my cohorts here or everybody, but there's very little data. And the thing I found odd, at least from a prosecutorial perspective, is that the father is allowed to plead guilty to the murder. In Jersey, you can only do that if you plead to the indictment, because I would be requiring that he act as a government witness or give us information and testify. But apparently he did not do that, and he is not cooperating from what I'm reading with law enforcement. So you don't have a body. As a homicide prosecutor, can you prove a case without a body? Yeah, you can. His statements that are being used in his plea do not implicate her. So you know where the defense is going in this case. He did something wrong. My client had nothing to do. She may have lied. She may have hidden to cover it up, but she had nothing to do with how that baby died. I don't know anything more to tell you really about the facts because there's nothing out there to my knowledge.
There really isn't. It's been very difficult. Even that hearing today, for the longest, they kept the media out, then they finally let them in, and then it was a 3-minute hearing. So a very brief. Quentin, the fact that baby Emmanuel has not been found, and even through this plea, I won't even call it a deal, because as Bob mentions, he didn't have to plead to the indictment. He chose to plead guilty, but didn't seem to have to offer definitively where the baby is. Do you think that that should have been part of it? If he's going to be able to plead guilty and get 25 to life, that he should also be very specific about the remains?
Oh, yes, I definitely think so. But one of the other things that has to be thought through is, if the mother goes to trial, right, it should not happen this way, where judges impose a trial tax when you get additional time above. But that's very likely a case in this, because the facts of this are just so gruesome. Like, at the end of the day, if a child is gone and the parents are accused of it and one of them is pled, right, you have all the facts and stuff to go to the jury, but the person who does the sentencing is the judge. They will have heard all of that stuff. And at that point, the father getting 25 to life, that doesn't mean that she's going to get the exact same sentence, even though in theory she should. But if she gets sentenced because she goes to trial, I think she'd likely get more time.
And I want to remind our viewers that clip. Early on in this investigation, everyone wanted to help finding baby Emmanuel. Take a listen.
We come to you guys asking you to help us find our son. He was abducted last night from Big 5. Somebody struck my wife while she was trying to change his diaper. And we just ask if anybody knows anything to please contact Ukaipa Police Department.
Don't hesitate, just call.
His name's Emmanuel. He's 7 months. He's 7 months old.
Have you been notified of any information yet by local authorities? No. We have not. They haven't told us nothing.
They said they don't have any major updates.
Do you guys plan on doing a local search of your own? We are.
Yeah, we have
at 4 o'clock here at Ukaipa.
The community set up a search party at 4:30. So we just ask you guys if you can help us, you know?
Please.
This is what he looks like. He's just a baby. Just give our son back, please.
He was wearing a black onesie with a Nike swoosh on him. If you know anything, please come forward. Please. Please bring us back our son. Safe.
And Bremner, if that gets played in trial for Rebecca Haro, I can't see any reason why it wouldn't.
No, I can't either. I mean, and he's just a baby. I mean, you watch them and the fact that he pled guilty with the 25 to life. And I think to myself, is she trying to work a deal where she tells him where the body is? I mean, the idea of a baby being abducted during a diaper change is a little bit far-fetched. You know, and the way they're acting is so, I think, transparently off with their supposed grief. And then to hold up a thing and say, this is what he looks like, he's just a baby. I mean, all of it is just terrible for her. But I wonder, is she trying to pull something where she says, I can show you where the baby is? Because nobody knows. She probably knows.
Yeah, no one knows. I will point out that Jake Haro did take them to certain places after he was arrested. Nothing was recovered in those areas. We don't know if he was saying this is where we had him. I don't know, Bob. To your point, there's not a lot that has been released, and every hearing we think we're going to hear more, especially because the community really was trying to find this little baby.
Yeah, I think we need to be really, really careful here, because I have investigated and defended murder cases in which the parent or the husband or the wife or the whatever is the typical suspect, and they must have been involved and they knew and they didn't. So, I mean, it was this baby subjected to some sort of shaken baby situation, which is, by the way, now inadmissible in the state of New Jersey. But did the father do something? Obviously, he pled guilty, that harmed the baby that the mother had nothing to do with but knew about it and tried to hide it because, you know, what am I going to do now? Have my husband go to jail and lose my income or lose my support or whatever? So I'm asking myself this question. And again, I know people are going to be agitated by me asking this question, but what evidence is there against this woman that she literally had anything to do with the death or disappearance of her baby? I see nothing.
You know, it may be uncomfortable, but we have to look at all sides. That's what we do here on Court of Opinion. Thank you all for your opinions on this one. We have to leave it there, but again, that hearing for Rebecca Haro, it has been moved to March 26th. We will keep you updated on the latest. When we come back from this break, though, we'll get the hot takes on the cold facts. Our panel giving their best opinions on today's biggest headlines, including these: 2 former law enforcement officers, one awaiting a jury verdict and the other awaiting a ruling on whether he can get rid of the presiding judge in his case. Stay with us.
Tonight, on closing arguments, Jake Harrow pleaded guilty to murdering his son, baby Emmanuel. But will Rebecca Harrow also plead guilty? We're live with the latest from today's hearing.
Closing arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV. 9 hours of back-to-back true crime cases every Saturday.
This is crazy.
On America's original true crime obsession. 48 hours on Court TV. Saturday starting at 3/2 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. This is the time in the show where we get the hot takes from our power panel. And first, here's the cold hard facts on our first headline. The jury still has the case in the Uvalde school massacre trial out in Texas. They've been deliberating now for 6.5 hours. This is their first day deliberating, and they can go until 11 p.m. into the night there. Now, former school officer Adrian Gonzalez is the one who's on trial, accused of failing to confront the gunman during the 2022 Uvalde school shooting that left 21 dead. Now, during closings today, the prosecution said a conviction would send a message that law enforcement must fulfill their duty to protect, but the defense said Gonzalez was not responsible for the attack and that he did do his job. Let's bring back in our guest panel: Quentin Washington, Bob Bianchi, and Ann Bremner. Quentin, I'm going to start with you. And reminder, we give everyone 25 seconds on the clock so we can get to all the stories and we can hear from all of you. But what's your take on this sending a message one way or the other? We had one officer who was charged like this in the past and was acquitted. If there's a guilty verdict here, does that change things, or not guilty? Does it mean prosecutors stop going after SROs?
Yeah, it does. It does send a message. But what's tough is that when does inaction lead to criminality? If you're a police officer, are you supposed to rush in there? Because if 21 people were dead from this shooting, at what point is he supposed to rush in there, and when does it become criminal? But the greater issue is you're going after officers for this, but should we as a society take the position that you can have a gun, but you shouldn't be able to outshoot a whole police department? Because that's why he didn't run in there, because that many people were being killed.
Ann Bremner, what's your take? Also the jury, a longer verdict. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, you know, I've defended police officers for decades in Seattle, Portland, Chicago, everywhere. But I look at this case and I really, my reaction is shame, shame, shame in terms of what happened to those kids and his inaction.
Bob Bianchi, let me get your take on this one. We've talked about this one a lot. We have Adrian Gonzalez, the second SRO to be on trial for this kind of a school shooting. But this is a tough one. There's an extra weight on these jurors because not only do they know the world is watching, but they also know that a community was devastated in this case.
But that is not the standard for prosecutors. It's not that the world is watching. It's not that people are upset. It's not that we have to have retribution. It's about whether or not a person committed a crime. I think this guy's a scapegoat. He didn't know what he was confronting. He doesn't have to walk into a buzzsaw, automatic fire. He doesn't have any backup. He doesn't have any support. And where are all the other people that were in the room when he was the one defendant? They knew exactly who it was. 77 minutes till they went into the room, and none of them are being prosecuted? Outrageous.
We will see what the jury does. We'll, of course, keep you updated on that here on Court TV. Let's move to our second headline. A former sheriff facing charges for shooting a judge is asking a higher court to get rid of the judge who's presiding over his case. Mickey Steins, caught on camera shooting Kevin Mullins inside of his chambers, says his current judge may be biased because His Honor sat next to the victim at a recent judicial conference. Now, this week, the Supreme Court of Kentucky remanded that request back to Special Judge Christopher Corhone for the defense to properly ask him if he wants to recuse himself first. Now, Steins claims through his attorneys that he had a break from reality the day of the shooting. No trial date set yet in that case. Bob, I'm going to start with you on this one. Should the judge recuse himself here?
No, the judge shouldn't recuse himself. Recusal is meant if the judge is not able to be impartial or if there would be an appearance of impropriety. Again, another case that I'm looking into. What, that he sat next to somebody? This was like something that actually happened to me when I was prosecutor and they tried to recuse me because supposedly I was in the same parking lot that somebody was in at some point in time. It's ridiculous, it's specious, and they should look into whether the lawyer is filing a frivolous motion here.
Great opinions. Former Judge Washington, tell me what you think about the defense trying to get an unbiased judge in a case where a judge was killed in his chambers. I mean, is even going to get a judge at that level that they are looking for?
You can try to, but here's the thing. Stand By Me is just a song. Like, he was standing beside somebody at a conference. Like, judges go to conferences, attorneys go to conferences, all these people go to conferences together. That does not mean that affects your impartiality. You got to show something more than you just standing beside somebody if you're going to say that they need to recuse themselves.
And Bremner, let me get your take. This was a mental health commission that these judges were at. I mean, should the defense be saying, hey, maybe this is a judge who's going to understand us a little better?
Exactly. I think if you kill a judge, you better be careful that you're not going to be able to get a judge that really thinks highly of you. I mean, he can keep, judicial shopping, I guess, but the fact is, standing together, ridiculous. I mean, a mental health conference might help you. I love the Stand By Me reference. I mean, that's a movie, but it's not anything compelling here in terms of recusal or disqualification.
Oh, yeah, we'll see what happens here. The special judge may recuse himself, and it may go back to the high court if he does not. Let's move to our third story. This one, in a case where a scorned wife is going after her husband's alleged mistress, not physically, but financially. So while infidelity can mean a monetary loss for the offender in a divorce, some states have a so-called homewrecker law, and the lawsuits have been making waves. So a recognizable figure in Arizona, an ex-U.S. Senator, Kristen Sinema, she's being sued by her bodyguard's wife over an alleged affair. Now, in North Carolina, where the bodyguard and his wife lived, it recognizes damages for, quote, alienation of affection. So the wife says she discovered the romantic messages on his Signal app. He later stopped wearing his wedding ring. Sinema, known for making fashion statements in Congress, has made no public statements on this one, but did file a motion to dismiss, saying that the wife doesn't have jurisdiction over her as an Arizona person in North Carolina. Who do I want to start with on this one? Ann Bremner, let me start with you. Are you a fan of this or not? Not every state has it.
I'm a huge fan. I think it should be a law in every state. I was going to say what should be illegal is that yellow dress. I'm like, oh my gosh. But the fact is that, Jezebels beware. You can't do that to people. And I think it's great to go back to some moral underpinnings when we say don't go after someone else's husband. It's very damaging. And apparently the wife has all the evidence. I won't go on and on about it, but I looked at this and I remember I've seen some cases like this over the years. It's a handful of states that have this kind of laws. I think they're mostly Southern. I hope they come out to the West.
Yeah, North Carolina is where we've seen those two making headlines. One TikTok star got sued for $1.5 million and the woman won, the wife won. Quentin, your take on this one?
So I think you got two levels to this. Like, there's the saying that everybody's using going around, that FAFO. Sinema was on one level, she FA'd. Now she's on the second level, she's FO'ing, and she's about to find out now. And that's what a situation she put herself in, because if you're literally taking someone's spouse, you're in North Carolina, and they have this law, then it's probably going to turn around to you. And the thing is that people want, because of the way in which she treated people want her to get a comeuppance, and this was what it might be.
And people may see it as their way of punishing the cheater, not just the spouse. Our power panel, thank you so much for being with us. Quentin, Washington. Oh, wait a minute. Bob Bianchi, 25 seconds. Go.
Honestly, I'm a little bit in shock here, and I love my co-guests, and Ann and myself have been together for years on these shows. I can't even believe this law exists. I think it's craziness to me. Like, where's the law? Like, she drove me crazy and into the arms of another woman. Is that next? I mean, these are consenting adults here. We're allowing them to sue because they no longer want to be with one another, want to be with someone else. I think it's crazy.
Awesome takes from everyone. We have to leave it there. Thank you for being with us.